Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Welcome back to our YouTube channel, and our today's topic is very important for everyone who are preparing for interview or who have some interview already organized. So this session we will try to focus on the interview question and answer specifically for product companies. And as you all know that in today's market the demand of QA automation and SDET role has been exponentially increased. That's why we will try to focus on some of the important aspect of SDET interview questions or QA automation interview question for product companies. So let's move forward. So let's first think that what we will learn from this session. So as we all know that QA automation or SDET role is not about a single technology or a single tool. It basically comprises of many tools and technologies. If you have seen our previous video where we have discussed like what are the tools and technologies required to be an expert in automation test or SDET, then you would have a little bit of idea that what are the tools or technologies we need to learn. So keeping those points in mind, we have decided to divide this entire series of interview question and answer into 4 parts. So our today's part is part 1, and we are going to cover 2 important points. First one is test plan and test case enumeration, and the second part is about automation framework. So basically what happens in product companies, the first round they usually focus on test plan and test case enumeration, then they move on to the interview question related to automation framework, right? So those 2 will be covered in today's part. Moving forward, we will cover Selenium, Java in part 2. In part 3, we will cover Jenkins CI/CD, Git and dependency management with Maven. In part 4, we will cover about API, Postman, automation of API with REST assured, and also coding interview question, because coding question is a very important part of SDET, right? Or automation QA also. So let's start our part 1 with test plan and test case enumeration. So here we will discuss the most asked interview questions related to test planning and test case enumeration. So the first question is explain the important components in test plan document. So when somebody is asking this question, basically he wants to know that what are the components or what are the contents you basically put in your test plan document. They want to figure out that really you are part of a team where you have contributed for test planning, right? So basically what happened in test plan, we start with introduction purpose little bit. Introduction is nothing but a little bit introduction about your team or maybe your little bit about your project, not too much, just couple of 1-2 lines is more than enough. Purpose, basically we write that why we are writing this test plan document. So basically what we do in most of the product companies, we write the purpose like to plan the testing activity or to plan the QA tasks for this sprint or the coming sprints or maybe this project or coming project, something like that, right? So the purpose would be your QA task planning, right? Feature overview, feature honors. Feature overview means what is the feature that you are going to test. For example, you are testing a e-commerce, right? E-commerce website, and this section is this you are testing a entire e-commerce website, right? But your component is basically about the checkout flow. So definitely your features overview would be your checkout. Feature owners means who are the owners of this feature, so that if any clarification or if any question arises, then who will be responsible to answer those, right? Then we will start with the measures. So this introduction, purpose, feature overview, feature owners, those are kind of initial setup, you can say, right? That's not the test plan document, but it's kind of a little bit information about the test plan document. Then we start with the test plan document with scope of testing. This is a very important part. Scope of testing basically comprises of 2 things: in scope and out scope. In scope specifically means that what are the features or what are the components you are going to test for this particular release or maybe for this test plan, right? For example, you are doing the testing of checkout page, right? So your test plan in the scope of testing, in the in scope part, you will write that you will test the checkout flow. Now outscope would be like if there is any payment you are doing in the checkout flow, right? Then you are not responsible to test the entire payment flow, right? You will only check the checkout flow, and you are not responsible to check any integrated part in it, right? In checkout you may be calling the payment part, right? But inside the payment what is happening, you are not supposed to test that part. Or maybe performance of checkout is not part of your scope. So outscope maybe would be your 2 point, 1 point performance, second point like the payment. So you would be mostly focused on the checkout flow only, right? So in scope would be your checkout flows pages, checkout screen. Outscope would be your performance and your checkout flow last page, maybe payment one, right? Now test environments. Test environments is very important and remember guys, whenever you are explaining those points, always give an example like I am giving, okay? So that the person to whom you are trying to explain will able to understand, right? If you say only like, okay, I have feature overview, feature owners, scope of testing, test environments, no, I would suggest better to divide, right? For every point, give a small example, right? It hardly takes 5 to 10 minutes. Right, test environments, here you will explain them in which environment you are going to test this one, in QA environment, in beta environment, in UAT environment, whatever environments, you need to mention those environments in test environment section. Test deliverables, you are going to explain that after the completion of test execution, what are the artifacts, right? What are the artifacts, what are the things you are going to submit. So a basic example would be your test execution report, test screenshots, your entire steps, means test steps supposed to be there in whatever test execution you are providing. The test case should have steps, it should have screenshots, wherever required a video supposed to get attached. So all those things would be your test deliverables. If automation is there, then automation execution report, right? Everything would be written in your test deliverables. Now next one is entry and exit criteria. Entry and exit criteria is basically at what point of time you will start the test execution or testing, and what point of time you will stop the test execution or your testing. So entry criteria mostly whenever your dev code is deployed in QA environment, your test environment is up and ready, right? You have required access. Those are basically entry criteria. Exit criteria is when your server is not accessible, when the deployment is happened from developer but you are unable to access it. So all those things will be your exit criteria, because you don't have the proper details, right? So sometimes what happens guys, exit criteria, they may twist it a bit. They may write exit criteria like when our entire execution is completed, when all the P0 test cases are completed, right? Those are also considered as your exit criteria, right? So entry criteria, you can mention, right, your test environment are up and ready, deployment is successfully done, you got the access. Exit criteria, all execution is completed, right, and there is no access problem, nothing, or else you again have to depend on that, right? Because if there is a blocker or something, you cannot execute, so again it will stop the execution, right? That's why exit criteria contain execution of all your P0 test case or P1 test case, that depends on your project, and all your artifacts are ready, test execution report are ready, everything is good, exit criteria is done. Next part is risk and mitigation. This is very important. That risk and mitigation is very specific to your project. Here you need to define like what are the risks you may face while doing the test execution and what would be your mitigation plan for it. Okay, for a simple example would be maybe your test environment is not working, right? Then what would be your mitigation plan? Who will be your point of contact? Will it be the DevOps guy, or you have access to check the server? All those things would be your mitigation plan, right? Test dependency means what are the teams dependency you have, what are the tools dependency you have, what are the environment dependency you have. All those things you need to write it over here. For example, Jira access to maintain your test cases. For example, some server access where you will do the execution, maybe S3 bucket access where you will put your screenshot. All those are test dependency. Test management basically how in this section basically they put like who will responsible for which section. Okay, so in test management they sometimes write the resources details also. For example, there will be 2 QA, 1 automation, 1 performance guy, what are the roles and responsibilities for them, who will be your test lead. All those things they will mention in test management. In defect management they will basically mention your defect life cycle. Okay, how you are going to manage your defect, who will raise the defect, which tool they will use to raise the defect, who will decide the priority and severity of the defect. All those things will be mentioned in your defect management tool, defect management section. I hope we have covered all the section, right? So however I have explained, you take this much of time and explain each and every point rather than just providing the high level names. Got it, right? Let's move on to our next question. How have you managed the risk in the test plan document? See, this is a very important part. That's why I have put it in a separate question, and in most of the product companies they will ask you this. Okay, so this is the most important section, as planning without mitigation plan would be considered as incomplete. Why I have mentioned this point? See, if you are preparing a test plan and you are not aware of the risks attached to it, then it won't help you much if there is any spillover, if there is any delay in getting the build where you will do the execution, right? So you should prepare your risk and mitigation plan properly. So in the risk, a common risk is like you will not get the deployed code. For example, you are supposed to get the code by November 1st week, right? By November 1st week you are supposed to get the build deployed in the QA environment, right? But what happens? They have not provided it to you, right? So definitely you have committed like by November 3rd week I will do the execution, November 1st week I will get the build, November 3rd week I will do the execution, but unfortunately you have got it by November 2nd week. So there is a 1 week of less time for your QA team, right, to do the execution. So this is a risk. So how you will mitigate it, right? So you need to mention this one, that if there is a delay in our deployment from the dev end, then definitely our test execution end date will get exceeded. Similarly, they have asked you to do the execution in some UAT environment, but you don't have access. So you should mention this one, that our access should be ready. When you will start the execution by November 2nd week, all your access should be provided to you. Because many of the time QA team are not responsible to raise the ticket to get the access, right? So you need to reach out to the respective team, get the access ready. That's why the risk and mitigation plan should mention all those things. Or else what happened by the November 3rd week, if your execution is not completed, they will escalate you. That's why if you mention all those things, it will be pretty clear for everyone, right? Okay, next question. If you have a requirement where you need to execute 500 plus test cases in 2 days, then what would be your approach? This is a very important question. Most of the product companies will definitely ask you this one. So here what they want to figure out, they are trying to figure out that you have really worked in a scenario where there is a lot of work pressure would be there, lot of workload will be there, and how you have managed it efficiently, right? So a generic scenario, 500 test cases in 2 days is pretty impossible, right? If you don't have automation, then it is kind of impossible at all, right? So now what would be your approach? How you will figure out a way so that you will be able to deliver it with proper quality maintained, right? So how you can do, first you need to set the priority of test case and try to execute the high priority one. What do you mean by that? Let you have 500 test case, right? Out of that, P0 means high priority test cases are 200. P1, P2 and P3 are 300. So now there is a crunch of time, you cannot delay it, right? What you should do, you should target the high priority test cases first. At least you should be aware that those are the high priority test case. Those has the highest impact on our important features. So those should at least pass, right? The second point, try to figure out that what areas is impacted due to the change. So testing can be more focused in that particular component. What do we mean by that? Let's take the example of checkout flow. So now there is a change happened in the checkout flow, right? Now you don't have to test the entire cart page, details page, checkout page, or maybe your order page, right? Payment page. So your regression would have contained all those things, right? All the 500 test cases means all those test cases, correct? But you know that changes happened only in checkout page. So now what you should do, out of 500 test cases, maybe 80 test cases are related to checkout. So first execute those 80 test cases, right? So you can save a lot of time, correct? Then if you have some bandwidth, go for the another 420 questions, right? So this is the smarter way to take the approach. Third one, execute all the scenarios related to previously identified bugs here. This is a very important point, guys. This one I got from experience. For example, you know that in previous change, okay, whenever the previous change happened in the checkout, we found some bugs in the payment, we found some bugs in the product, we found some page bugs in order page. So you need to first execute those defect related test cases, because normally what happens, whenever we found a defect, we map it with a test case. So make sure that apart from your 80 test case related to checkout, high priority test case, you should also execute the test case which are tagged to previously identified defects. Right? Great. So the next question is, what is the use of in-scope and out-scope? As I have already explained in the test plan, in-scope means the features to be tested, out-scope means the features will not be tested. Right? So whenever they ask these questions, never answer only in these two lines, give them an example. Right? Like I have given an example, right? You are supposed to test checkout view. So you are what you are doing, you are searching for an iPhone, right? Then you are adding that iPhone into your cart, right? And then you are pressing on continue button, right? Then you are making the payment and you are getting the order ID, right? This is the entire flow, correct? So now this will be your in scope. But what is your out scope? Now you don't have to test all the payment page. What do you mean by that? Maybe in payment page there will be payment through Axis Bank, payment from SDFC, ICICI, Citi, right? There are many banks, right? Maybe they will ask you to do the payment with UPI, EMI, partial EMI, credit card, debit card, American Express card. You don't have to go through all those things, right? That should be taken care by the payment team. Right? I hope you understood, right guys? So this is how you should define your in-scope and out-scope. You should be very particular, you should be very clear and properly, precisely mention all those points, or else what will happen whenever there is a miss from your end, and if it is not even part of your checkout, then you could have explained that we have mentioned this point in our test plan and it has been reviewed and approved. So you should have always artifacts to manage those kind of escalations. Right? Okay, next let's go to the second one. Write high level test scenario for grocery checkout page. Okay, so I have written couple of steps over here. In most of the companies they will ask you this one, guys. Okay, you are applying for any product companies, they will ask you a real-time scenario, that how they will give any scenario, like write some test case on checkout page, write some test case on a feature which is specifically fetching the weather details of your city, write a test case about an iPhone feature where you can zoom in or zoom out, right? Write some test cases about chatbot. All those things they will ask you. So here I have just written couple of lines. This is not kind of all the test cases. I am just trying to give you an idea that how you should write. For example, ensure that user can access the checkout page, right? Your checkout page consists of all details like name, quantity, all those basic things, right? So whenever they ask you those high level test scenarios, whenever they will ask, don't write all the negative or positive. Okay, first ask them that do you expect me to write all the scenarios related to positive or negative, or just the high level test scenarios? High level test scenario is supposed to be very less. Okay, don't write 30-40 test scenarios. Okay, but try to cover everything. You're getting my point, right? You should not be like, okay, there is a space is there, comma is there. Don't write separate test scenarios like that. Okay, ask them that do you expect me to, always ask. Okay, whenever they ask this question, always clarify the point, what they want. They want to you to write all the positive negative scenario, or just overall happy flow and couple of negative scenario. I have given a little bit of overview here. You can go through these steps, right guys? I have written 4 scenarios, so you will 5 scenarios basically. You will get just to give you a flavor like how basically you should write and what would be the format. Second question, what is the use of in-scope? We have already defined this. There is a small difference here. Okay, what is the use of in-scope and out-scope? We have already mentioned over there. So here I have again mentioned it. The reason behind it is what happens in some organization, because I forgot to mention in the first explanation. In some one they will ask you like in scope and out scope, do you mention automation? Do you mention performance? Okay, so be clear on this point. In scope and out scope mostly we define features. Okay, but in some organization they define those things also. Okay, that performance would not be done or automation would not be feasible. They also mention in out scope. Okay, so be clear. But normally, usually, as per the testing QA standards, it should only include the feature. Okay, just keep this in mind. If you have any doubt when the interviewer is asking, cross-question him, ask him that do you expect me, this is only related to features, right? Because we mention only features. so that if whatever company you are approaching for, if they are maintaining automation and performance also, then it will be clear for them. Correct? Last question, difference between test plan and test strategy. So as I have already explained, test plan is basically prepared to define that what are the features you are going to test, what would be your approach, everything would be there. In test strategy, basically what happened, it explains the test design and determines how testing needs to be done. So this is the definition, okay. And one more important point, test plan is project level, test strategy is for multiple projects, organization level. So this is the definition. Let me give you a small example. Basically what happens in product companies, there are many areas, right? For let's take an example of Apple. So in Apple, maybe there are different areas, maybe some iPhone features, iPhone camera, iPhone tracking your activities, or iPhone alarm, iPhone calculator, all those things are different team. Every team has their own QA department, right? So what they do, they define one test strategy document which will be followed by all those teams. But the test plan document will be specific for each team. So for alarm team, there will be one test plan. For calculator team, there will be one test plan. For iPhone camera, there will be one test plan. Test plan document would be separate for everyone, but test strategy would remain same. In test strategy, they will write that, okay, whoever is performing testing, he will make sure that his testing supports cross-browser, means for all the browser. His testing supports multiple devices. His testing supports different version of iPhone. His testing supports different version of layout. All those should be go into your test strategy. In test strategy, basically they define that whoever is doing the testing, they should aware that we always support cross-browser, backward compatibility, or different layout, resolution, all those things. Right? In testers, they also define that whenever you are going for QA, your automation, definitely automation should be part of your QA. So those things they defined it at test strategy level, right? They will like that, okay, whenever somebody is writing test case, they should make sure that test steps are added. Whenever somebody is executing test, he should definitely attach a screenshot for artifacts, right? All those things they define at the test strategy level. So entire organization, all the projects should follow it. But test plan is again specific to your particular project or area. Got it, right guys? Super. Let's go back to the second one. The second, this is the part 2, correct guys? Part 1, second point, automation framework. So now test plan and test case we have discussed. Now we will move to the automation part. The first question, a very common question, is explain the folder structure in your framework. So whenever they ask this folder structure in your framework, always give an example. Always give an example. Properly explain each and every section. The features that are important for the business, scenarios which have a large amount of data, common functionalities across applications. Okay. So what happens whenever they ask you the folder structure of your framework? Okay, what you should do, you should explain it with an example. Okay, I will show you in my IntelliJ, okay, that how you should explain your folder structure in your framework. Before to that, okay, whenever they will ask this, add this one to your question, that how basically you decide that what are the how you decide that this particular section is considered for automation. For example, they will ask you to explain the folder structure in your framework. Okay, before jumping into that, tell them that okay, whenever we got a requirement, first we decide that what are the features we need to consider for automation, and basically we look out the scenarios which have a large amount of data or which have common functionalities across the applications. Once we decide all those things, according to those information, first we figure out that how many test cases we have, and those test cases need to be automated in which approach, right? Once our approach is finalized, once our tools is finalized, then only we move to the folder structure. Before folder structure, those are kind of your prerequisite. Why prerequisite? Because as per the data derived from those things, you decide what kind of folder structure you are going to prepare. Folder structure is not always generic, right? It's generic to some extent, but yes, from those derived data from those points, you will figure out that what kind of folder structure or which kind of folder structure I will design so that it supports all the scenarios that has been discussed or covered. So now, first you will check that how many test cases you need to automate. You have decided that 50 test cases I need to automate. For an example, right? Most of the test cases are related to test data. there are a lot of test data I need to look around. From this you will derive that, okay, that means I need to prepare a separate test data folder where I will manage my data, maybe in Excel, in JSON or something, right? Similarly, if you have many cross features, many pages you need to go through, you need to figure out that, okay, that means I need to create a separate page package where I will define all my pages, right? So those are the things you need to figure out from your previous requirement. Once that is done, we will design our folder structure. So here I have designed a small one. So this is a very generic folder structure, guys. Okay, so if you can see, first what we do in SRC, okay, there will be one main Java, one will be your test Java, right? So whenever you expand your folder structure, start from here, that I would have one SRC main Java, one SRC main, one SRC test. In SRC test, I will keep all my test scripts. So here I will have my test scripts, right? Everything related to my test scripts will go inside this SRC test folder, right? And the SRC main will have multiple folders, right? So when you explain the folder structure, what you will say, that I have two main SRC. Inside SRC I will have SRC main, SRC test. SRC test will basically contain my test cases. SRC main will contain my common packages. In common packages there will be at least 4 to 5 folders, right? One is your core, one is your pages, one is your utility. Core, pages and util, these are the mandatory. Step definition will come into BDD approach, so we can ignore this one. First of all, you should have at least 3 folders: core, pages, util. In util you will keep all the common classes. Common classes means your fail retry, your retry listener, robot utilities, screenshot utilities, string utils, SSN service, email feature, everything will go inside your util. Pages is again, let your, as I told you have to test home, login, order, those kind of page, right? So now in each page, as you know that we all are following page object model these days, we will have different question on it, and in that question I will explain it more in depth. But yes, what happens in pages folder, you are going to create multiple classes as per the screen. For example, you have 4 screens, so 4 classes will get created, right? In each class you will keep the locators related to that particular class. So one pages and one core. Core will contain your base test case, right? Base test case means where you will set up your prerequisite and post. Pre and post, basically your before method, before shoot, before test, and after shoot, after test, everything will go inside your base test case. Sometimes we call it as a driver script also. All your test script class will extend the base test case. Means whatever test script class would be there, for example this one, this will definitely extend your base test case. In base test case we'll have your all the details, means your before shoot, after shoot, before test, after test, everything we basically do it in our core, right? So in your folder structure, what you will say that you will have 2 SRC main, SRC test. SRC test you will have the test scripts. SRC main you will have at least these 3: core, pages, util, and those are the things you keep it over here. Enums is not required always, but yes, it depends on how you are designing your framework. I am just talking about the basic generic, which is mandatory. There will be one more called as resources. You should have a resources folder. In resources, what you will keep driver, right? Driver is specifically nowadays, I guess in latest one you don't even need this, but yes, definitely a driver folder would be there in previous time, but in recent Selenium they don't even need this one. Test data, definitely here you will keep all the test data related information, right? One more folder would be your test.ng XML. Here you will create your suite, sanity suite, smoke suite, parallel execution, your regression. Every suite will go inside this folder. So resources have 3 more folder: driver, test data, test.ng, and each will have the respective things. And in the common we will keep our config property. Here you will put all the configuration properties details in this particular file. We are clear, right? All the mandatory one: resources, SRC main, SRC test, only test script. SRC main will have 3: core, pages, util. Util will have common, pages will have page object model classes for each screen, which will have the locators. In core we will have base test case, basically, which will be kind of your driver script. To support base test script, I have created a couple of configuration manager, driver manager, okay, just to manage my driver and configuration properly. Nothing much inside it, okay, those are just to fetch data from my property file, or sometime I'm getting browser details, okay. Those are pretty common. So core will contain that section, and you will have one more folder called resources, which have 3 subfolder: driver, test data, test ng, and each will have their respective information and one common configuration to keep your configuration file data. Right? Cool. So this is enough for your folder structure. Let's go to the second one. What is it? What is BDD approach in testing? So guys, BDD approach is mostly preferable in banking clients. So whenever you are preparing for a banking interview, any banking level companies, make sure that you would have acquired little bit of BDD knowledge. BDD is nothing but a behavior driven development testing. And here what we basically do, instead of writing test scripts, we write our test case in the format of give and when and then. Right? Give and when, then whenever they ask you this question, give them an example also. Okay, so it will be easy for them. So it will help them to understand basically what you are trying to explain. Right? So in BDD approach, basically we will have our step definition, right? We will have so something like this: given user launches application, right? So this is basically a step definition file which we need to map with the feature file, which basically happens in the BDD approach. In BDD approach, you need to you create a feature file, map it with the step definition. Right? So every test case will be written in a given, when and then format. So given user launches application, right? When user enters login ID and password, then user should able to log in successfully. This should be your 3 steps in your feature file. Now for every step you need to map it with the respective piece of code. So your test case will look like: given user launches application, when user enters valid username and password, then user should able to log in. This would be an example of BDD. Right? Okay, so this will be your BDD approach. So whenever they will ask you BDD, give this example. One small example would be enough. Okay, and after that they may deep dive into it. We will discuss about it in the later sessions, that what are the possible questions from Cucumber you will get. Okay, I will give you also a couple of links which you can refer for the same. Third question: have you designed any framework from scratch? If you have really designed it, say yes, or else tell them that we have already an existing automation framework and we used to contribute on that part. And if they ask that, okay, if you say yes, then explain the folder structure and tell them that each and every class why you have designed it. Okay, how I have explained over here, you need to explain. In the folder structure, you are not explaining that what these classes are doing, right? But when you are saying that you have designed something from scratch, you need to explain those classes also. Why you have written this class? What is the use of this method, right? So all those things they will ask you. Correct? So if you are saying yes, then explain the folder structure along with the classes and why you have added those classes. Got it, right? Fourth one, explain the utility classes you have created for your framework. So utility class is the most important part. Rest of the things are very easy to do, because utility class is basically consumable across all the projects. For example, that you are working for a project in iPhone. You have 3 projects. One is related to iPhone camera, one is related to iPhone video, one is related to iPhone calculator. Now, if they are using 3 different frameworks, this util section will almost remain same. So this is kind of a consumable package. So whenever they ask explain util package, tell them that what are the common packages you have created. For example, fail retry means how to re-execute your failed test case. JSON util, you have created this one to read data from JSON. Right? All those methods are very important, guys. Okay, I would suggest definitely give it a try. Then robot utility. For example, you have any keyboard actions you need to perform, right? So that's why you have created a separate utility package for it. Screenshot utility, you need to take screenshot, right? So all those things comes under utility package. So I have given a couple of examples, you can make note of it, right? And you can explain this during the interview. At least explain 4. Okay guys, one is retry listener, one is JSON util, one is robot utility, one is screenshot utility. Got it, right guys? Cool. How to rerun failed test case of your automation suite using listeners. Okay, so what happens basically in utility class, when you say that you have written retry listener, they will ask you to explain. Okay, so in retry listener, what you can do, guys, I have written a proper one for it. Okay, I'm just sharing it with you. So how basically the retry listener works, Okay, this is the entire code I have written over here. So basically what you need to do, you need to take help of iRetry analyzer. First you need to create a class. Okay, you need to create a class called as failRetry, which will implement iRetry analyzer. This part is given by the test-ng, so you need to completely use this entire piece of code. You just need to change the retry count, means how many times you want to rerun the failed test case. So basically why we need retry listeners? If you have 100 test case, right, and out of the 10 test script failed, instead of rerunning it manually, what you can do, you can use retry listener, which will automatically re-execute the failed test case. So for example, in the first run 10 test case failed, in the second run it will re-execute those 10 test cases, right? So if you want to re-execute twice, thrice, how many times you want to re-execute, you need to mention it over here. So first class would be like this, failRetry, right? You don't have to do anything else, guys. Okay, just utilize this one, failRetry implements iRetry. Don't change anything, just change the max retry count as per your requirement. Okay, then create a class which implements iAnnotation transformer, right? And here what you need to do, see, create a class which implements iAnnotation transformer and pass the class name that we have created in step 1. So what is the class name that we have created? failRetry we have created. So this class name you need to pass in the retry listener class. See, I must have passed it over here, line number 18. You need to pass it like this. So if you have given some another name for the first class, you need to pass that over here. So we have created one class where we have mentioned max retry count. We have created another class where we have implements iAnnotation transformer. Again, this code is given by test-ng. We are just changing the values as per our requirement, and you need to define the class. Once these two steps are done, your third step would be add listener in testng.xml file after the suit. So you need to add it like this. And listener, what you need to pass? You need to pass the class name, retry listener class name, where I have kept the class com.task.automation.util.retry listener. com.task.automation.util.retry. Done. Now you are good to go. So wherever you have written your automation suite, for example, our resources testng.xml smoke suite, for example, sanity, let me see, I have added the listener over here, so it will automatically execute the failed test case. Got it, right? Okay, so now let's go back to our next case, which is next question. Tell a scenario where you have provided framework level changes and explain its impact. Okay, here give the example of retry listener. So they will ask you that what are the framework level changes. So in the framework level changes, you can say that you have not first explain the problem statement. Okay, that when you have joined the organization, there are many test cases we are failing and we need to manually trigger the execution. So you have come up with an idea where those failed test cases can be executed of its own, and you have used the test-ng provided listeners for it. When he will ask that can you explain, then explain the retry listener, how you have implemented it, and after that how much time you have saved. So whenever you are explaining, guys, always keep in mind two things: problem statement and impact. Means whatever the problem statement you are trying to resolve by adding the framework level changes, and what is the impact you got out of it. Okay, because this is the two things I usually prefer to hear from the person who is giving the interview, right? So I would suggest always keep two things in your mind: problem statement, impact. Right? Cool. Next question: which source code management tool have you used for your framework and why? So source code management means what happens, basically our automation projects are quite big nowadays, right? There are many people who are working on it simultaneously. So to manage the code properly, to manage the source code properly, and to do the maintenance of those code properly, we use source code management tool. There are SV and Git, but the most used one is the Git. Okay, because the branching capability is very good, right? Git integration with Jenkins or CI/CD is very nice. It is very easy to use Git. There it don't require a lot of trainings, or it's the learning curve is also not too long. It's very nice, okay, easy to learn. So Git is the most used one. Whenever you answer this question, always prepare with couple of Git interview questions. Okay, we will discuss it later. Okay, but yes, whenever they will ask, tell them that your source code management is happening using Git or whatever you guys are using, but Git is the most used one. Okay, and if you ask why, then you can give the reason, like it has some pros, and those are kind of the pros I have mentioned in 3 points. Got it, right, guys? What is page object model? This is a very important question for UI automation project. Okay, so the page object model is a design pattern considered highly popular in Selenium, as I told, right? This is for UI web automation. In page object model, what basically we do, let me give you an example. What basically we do, we map this page class with your test class. For example, I need to write test case for home page. So in the home page, I will keep all the locators related to home page, and in home test over here, I will write all the test case related to home page. And this home page, basically what I will do here, I will create an object of this home page. Getting my point, right? Let me explain again. Here I will keep, I have already done it for sign in, so let me show you. So this is my sign in page, right? Here I will keep all my locators related to sign in page. Then whenever I will write the sign in test case, in here I will create a object of my sign in page. So mapping of your pages class and your test class supposed to be there. And whenever you are approaching this page object model, you should have one class for each page. Login page, sign in page, login page or sign in page, then home page, order page, product page. Like if you have those kind of things, same format will be over here. So if you have home page, login page, order page, product page, sign in task, the same classes you have over here, means home test, login test, order test, product test, sign in test, task test. So there will be perfect mapping. So if somebody, why basically we do this, you want to write some test case on home page, some new feature has been added. If those things will be there in one page, the new person who is writing the test case, he will not aware that the locators are already identified or not. So he will end up identifying those locators again. So instead of that, if you keep it in one test case, he can immediately come up to this class and figure out, okay, his required locator is present or not. If it is present, he can simply reutilize it. Getting my point, right? So basically that's what we try to do in page object model. We try to map each screen with the class in pages part and then map it with our test scripts. Got it? Cool, right? Okay, so give this example. Okay, always remember guys, never give theoretical answer, give an example. Always explain some design patterns you have used in the framework. Okay, so this particular question we will cover in section of Java, because I will map the singleton pattern with one examples. Okay, but they may ask in the framework section also, but I will kept it for our next session. Means what I will do in our next session, which is related to Java, I will explain this question to you. Okay, that how you can map this one, your framework, with the design patterns. How to rerun failed test case of your automation suite using listeners, this one I have already explained. They may ask you in different ways. Okay, how retry listeners has been used, so be ready for it. Okay, they may ask you that if you have, they may give you a scenario, I have 100 test case, 10 test cases are failing, what would be the approach to manage it efficiently? You should answer again with rerun failed test case, right? So see, I'm again and again saying rerun, because see, if you learn one section, it can be reutilized at multiple interviews and with multiple answers. Makes sense, right guys? Cool. Next one, tips and tricks. Okay, so this one is very important section. So always remember guys, don't try to learn those DS algo initially. Okay, stick to the basics first, because if I will ask you that tell me a map which maintains insertion order, if you are unable to answer this question but you know DS and algo, how does it matters, right? That's why I always stick to the basics. Similarly, if you don't know how to prepare a proper test plan, and now you are saying that you can design a framework by using builder pattern, how does it make sense? Correct? You don't know how to prepare a test plan properly. You are getting a lot of escalation for it, but you are designing using builder pattern in your framework. How does it matters? You don't know how to design a proper folder structure, but you are using builder pattern, singleton pattern. It doesn't make any sense, right? Without builder pattern, singleton pattern, I can execute my test script, right? But without a proper folder structure, nobody can reutilize your framework. So always think about it. Okay, stick to the basics. That doesn't mean you will not learn builder pattern or advanced stuff. You should learn this, but after you master the basics. So stick to the basics always. Explain with examples and scenarios. However I'm explaining guys, stick to that. Always give examples, and 2 points to keep in mind: problem statement, impact, right? Whenever you are answering a question, keep in mind that I will give him an example which will explain the problem statement and then impact. Avoid using abbreviations. What do you mean by BDD, TDD? Don't try to avoid those. For any project you are working, cart page you are seeing CP, DP, checkout flow CF. Don't say like this, because the person is maybe not aware of your project, right? And it will give you a wrong impression. Always explain every word properly, correct? Because if the time is not sufficient, they will extend the interview timings, right? Or maybe they will arrange one more round. They will not arrange mostly one more round, but I'm saying try to make it simple. Don't make it complex unnecessarily, right? Try to make it simple. Stick to the basics, right? Example scenario with problem statement and impact. Practice and repeat. Always practice, guys. Okay, why I'm saying always practice? I have told many things about folder structure today, but what I would suggest, go to your IntelliJ or Eclipse IDE. Create this folder structure of your own. Once you create it, you will never forget it. No matter how many YouTube videos you watch, you will again forget after 15 days. Okay, that's why practice and repeat. Take care. Bye bye. We will meet in our next session with a lot of questions on Selenium and Java. Till then, keep learning and stay healthy.